Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it is Wednesday in the Rev, hump day. Yeah, it's been pretty quiet lately because they're all hiding in the war rooms, figuring and conspiring, figuring out what kind of propaganda they can use to stuff all these tax increases and fee increases and the fact that we are basically bankrupt and still hide it from the people.
Yeah,
We can't borrow any money till 2033, but we haven't stopped spending money though. We
right.
just keep spending money. But how are we gonna? How can you reconcile that? If your bank tells you that if they shut off your credit cards, if they tell you you can't spend any more money, guess what? You can't. Because then you're going to lose your house, you're going to lose everything because you got no money. They said, look, we got no money. We got no money, but they never stopped spending. This is the irony of government. They don't care. They don't care that we don't have any money. They're going to take our money and they're trying to figure out how to put lipstick on that pig. That's what they're trying to do right now. That's why it's so quiet. And we're doing all the little feel good things like giving out scholarships and let's have some movies. Let's have a couple of feel good, fuzzy wuzzy things and make everybody feel good so we can ram this propaganda down their throat.
The this really interesting part about all this is people are still asking where is the budget? Because it's May and we know the budget usually comes out somewhere around just before Memorial Day, about a week, 10 days before Memorial Day. And that gives the city council 45 days to act on the budget from the day it's presented to them, not from the day it's presented at a city council meeting, from the day it's presented to the city councilors, which is a different thing. And that's what people don't understand about the budget because it's got to come out and they've got to act on it in 45 days. And if they don't act on it in 45 days, then the mayor gets it automatically. But you need to review this budget this year. Everyone needs to. You need to look at it closely because last year, the city council turned around and approved it without looking at the revenue and the expenses because the revenue did not equal the expenses. And I think what the city was depending on, or the administration was depending on, was the fact that we have free cash at the end of every year. So we'll spend the free cash now to balance the budget, which they can't do, but they do it anyhow. Because remember, they have positions that are unfilled in various departments. That's free cash. That's how they create free cash. They don't fill the positions. They fund them, but they don't fill them. And that's why it's a problem. It's a problem for a lot of people. It's especially a problem for me.
Well, look, Alphonse was right. He said about these. He said have a sign asking for money. No, they don't, Al. They don't ask you. They just take it.
That's right.
See, that's the problem. They don't ask you. They didn't ask you if you wanted diamond. It was on the ballot in the other communities. Fall River didn't ask you. Shut up. We're building it. They don't ask you when they spend money. They even make sure they never put it on a ballot, even when they're spending in excess of what that requires them to be. They cut it up into little pieces, which is illegal, so they don't have to let us speak. The only way we can speak is at the elections. That's why we got to throw all these bums out. We can't spend money till 2033. 2033, we can't borrow any money until. So where are we going to get the money? You think they care about you? You're going to lose your house. They're going to increase your water rates. They're going to increase this rate. They're going to triple your excise tax on your car. They're going to do everything they can and then wonder why the city has all kinds of foreclosures on houses.
Detroit.
You know, Detroit. Look, I've always said that we are going to be Detroit. All these people are getting rich. They're going to take their money and move wherever they want to move, and go. And now the irony is, somebody's saying this yo-yo is looking at a fourth term. The guy that said he only wanted to come here to stabilize the city, the guy that said he was going to give us a tax break, all he's ever done is give us increases in all our taxes and fees, and he thinks he's going to get a fourth term. I want to see if they discuss revenue. I want to see if somebody calls for a real audit. They're not going to. Because this city will be Detroit a lot sooner than people anticipate. And that's the problem. I mean, look, this country is it's falling apart. And the propaganda machines are just operating at full speed. All you got to do is look at the national level. They're trying to tell you the economy's good. The economy's a disaster. The employment numbers are terrible. Unemployment went up. And even the people who are employed, they found are mostly illegals. But they tell you everything's fine. They're dragging people into court that are their political enemies, and they're letting people with... There was a guy that got arrested 33 times in 1 month. 33 times in 1 month, still getting out in New York City with no bail. No bail at all. Yeah, I know, and it's terrible, and you're going to see a lot more of those foreclosures in this community, because we have, like I said, they live in this dream world because they're elitists and they got money. They don't know that in Fall River the per capita income's $30,000. They don't care. How are people who the household income's 50? How are you going to afford to pay all these bills? You can't. Oh, all these people from Boston that come, oh, bullshit they are. We're getting 1,100 people a month moving out of this state. Nobody wants to live in this state anymore. And anybody that can move out will move out. You wonder why? This is why. They live in a different world. Just look at all these demonstrations in the street. They took over buildings, broke windows, and their propaganda is that idiot Michael Moore, the rich movie guy, says, oh, they got a right to take over buildings and break shit. No, they don't. No, they don't. You gave them the right to do that? Oh, yeah, it's their right. No, it's the Constitution. No, it's not the Constitution, because guess what? The preamble to the Constitution clearly states that they are supposed to provide domestic tranquility and for the common defense and promote the general welfare. They're not doing that by letting them destroy buildings that we have to pay for. But the rich have a different set of rules. You notice that J-Lo and Ben Affleck and Matt Damon going to the Met Gala dressed up like clowns. The demonstrators didn't get any of them, did they? Oh no. NYPD had it. You couldn't get within 2 blocks of the Met. You couldn't get within 2 blocks. They had everything locked down. The limos bringing these rich yo-yos in who live in this dream world, who are actually funding these bums. And they were going to protest them anyway. They don't suffer. They don't suffer. Because they're rich. You think they're going to have a protest on Obama's front lawn at Martha's Vineyard? Look how long the illegals lasted in Martha's Vineyard. Look how long they lasted when they got near Lori Lightfoot, the former mayor of Chicago's house, who defunded the police. She got the entire Chicago Police Department, the National Guard, and everybody there within minutes. These people live in a different world. They don't give a shit. This is the world they want. Super rich and dirt poor. Back to you, CJ.
As we know, there's one law for the rich and one for the poor. Never changes. Never changes, people. Just remember that. We all know if you got money, you can do what you want. If you got money, you can go where you want. If you're poor, and you know why there's one law for the rich and the poor? The rich don't steal bread. The rich don't stand on the street corner begging for money. The rich get a tax incentive. The rich buys properties for $1. That's how it works for the rich. And we are the poor. Even if you're moderate income, you're poor. Because there's only two classes in Fall River: the rich, the haves, and the poor, the have-nots. And that's where we fall, into the have-nots.
And you're right, CJ. And they use these people as their weapons.
Right.
Because they fund Antifa. And now here's a classic example of a dual standard. Antifa caused hundreds of billions of dollars worth of damage.
That's right.
They murdered people.
That's right.
They murdered people. Not one of them was prosecuted.
That's right.
Nobody. These demonstrators are violating laws, destroying property. Nobody is getting prosecuted. And the rich don't care. They're helping them not get prosecuted. But if you are the wrong party and you walk into the Capitol, you're doing 4 years, 5 years in jail for walking around. But they can walk into a building and completely destroy it. Michael Moore said they can do it. Remember, he said, you can do that. Go in and destroy the freaking building unless you support a different party. Right. That's the problem. Unless they want to put Trump in jail for 197 years, but Hillary Clinton destroyed 33,000 emails with hammers, violated the law. Nothing. There's look, they want these people. These people are their tools. They're their useful idiots. Because they get these malleable morons and they convince them to do this shit right before an election so everybody's focused on what's going on. And that's the problem. But they're always insulated. But they're not going to be insulated forever. What they don't realize, once the barbarians have destroyed everything for the regular people, they'll eventually get around to them. With that, back to you.
You know, the president spoke last night, I guess it was, about the fact that we need to stop hate speech at these colleges. We need to stop hate speech in this country. Anti-Semitism is not acceptable. And I agree, anti-Semitism isn't acceptable. Okay? But at the same token, you have Israel trying to create a genocide with the Palestinians. And they're justifying it by saying, no, it's Hamas. And, you know, I quoted the scriptures on this show a couple of days ago, and I made it very clear. We need to support Israel. But Israel also needs to make sure that they're not doing what was done to them. Because they'll never have done to them again what was done. And The Holocaust Awareness Day was yesterday, Monday, and they spoke about it. And people know, people remember. Not everyone's forgetting. Some of us old timers, we ancient old dum dum. We remember these things. We know them. But I'm not going to forget things either, like the Antifa raids, like the Antifa looting. But now that students want to have their voices heard by taking over a building at a college, they're not destroying the building, they're hanging flags out the window. They're inside the building. And they're threatening them with arrest, and the president said, arrest them? Why didn't you do that with Antifa? Oh, wait a minute. That wouldn't have been politically expedient. You need political expedition, nothing else. And that's what happens. That's what happens.
Well, the problem with this is it's not only a dual standard, it's a hypocrisy on the part of these Democrats, especially, and these progressives and liberals, because they're all against hate speech except when they get it, when they do it. What do you think the President of the United States is doing when he condemns everybody that believes in the slogan, Make America Great Again? They're all dangerous people. They're the greatest threat to the United States. I don't see people who are wearing MAGA hats destroying buildings. But I see college kids. There's your double standard again. These rich, spoiled brats desecrating a World War I memorial, desecrating the statue of George Washington, and thinking that they have the right to say, gas the Jews, death to America. But that's not hate speech? The President of the United States, that rotten bag of oatmeal we have that can't utter a sentence unless he's on speed, and then he's only good for about 2.5 minutes, was condemning anti-Semitism. Yet he won't send equipment to Israel to protect themselves. He wants to condemn everybody who isn't in his party. Everybody that isn't in his party is a dangerous person, a threat to America. These people aren't a threat to America. They're yelling death to America. They're not a problem. This isn't a problem. Yet the same wimpy yo-yos are on there with in front of the microphone saying, they were throwing bananas at us. Bananas at us. And we have people with banana allergies. Really? Really? Give us vegan food and water. We want to die. We're going to die from dehydration in this building. Well, you took over the building, asshole. Find the water in there. These people, they're so ridiculous. It's incomprehensible. Nobody can see a double standard here. Nobody can see this double standard. Throwing a banana around them? That's cruel and unusual. It's psychological warfare. Psychological warfare. Throwing a banana at you. While you're saying it's okay for Hamas to lob missiles into Israel. I mean, they have succeeded in doing what Joe McCarthy said in the 1950s, and most of you don't know who Joe McCarthy is. I mean, I didn't really know him either, but I read about him, and I heard about him. He was a senator in the 1950s who said, And they ran him, of course, out of office because they said he was a maniac and he was crazy and everything else, and a conspiracy theorist. He's the guy that said there's communists all over this country right now. And he predicted that this country was going to unravel. Why? And he gave the reasons in 1950, nearly 100 years ago. 75, 78, 77. He said, the commies are going to take over the colleges and brainwash the students. It took them nearly 75 years, but they brainwashed most of them. And then he said, they will be financed by all the rich people. And who are these people being financed by? George Soros, all the rich, the Rockefellers, all the rich people are financing them because they're their little tools, they're idiots. And then he also said, and you know who else was going to help them? The movie industry with their money and the media. I guess Tail Gunner Joe was right. In 1950, it was a plan that they've had, and it took them a long time. But that's the way fascism rises. They take over the media, they brainwash the people, and the rich get richer, and they create a slave class. And this is what's happening in this country. These people are so hypocritical. I mean, Jesus, how can you not see this? Biden talking about anti-Semitism when before he couldn't say the word without including, anti-Islamophobia. Well, listen, there shouldn't be any of that. I don't agree with rhetoric like that. You shouldn't be against Jews because they're Jews. You shouldn't be against Muslims because they're Muslims. You shouldn't be against anybody because of what they are. You should be against people who are doing things that are morally wrong, that are advocating for killing people who are different than them. And not all Muslims are saying that. That's the problem. The problem is we don't have one rule, and we're supposed to. We're supposed to have equal justice and equal treatment in this country. That's why this country was founded. And Tail Gunner Joe was right. This country is on the verge of collapse. And by the way, yesterday was the first day that book by Victor David Hansen was on sale. It was released yesterday, and I bought it. It's being delivered tomorrow. About how all these powers who thought they were going to last forever, like Carthage and Rome and all these other ones, destroyed themselves. Because, you know the old adage, if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. Well, guess what? The United States of America is repeating history, and we've only lasted 250 years. And that's peanuts. Carthage was like 800 years. The Roman Empire was, we're talking empires that lasted far longer than the United States. And how did they get destroyed? Exactly the way we're destroying ourselves now. But that's why they don't want you to learn history. That's why they don't want you to educate yourself. We keep telling you, follow the money and educate yourself. Think about what's going on. Don't just listen to the screaming. Listen to what they're screaming. I have no problem with anybody who wants to walk down a street and yell, that they want Palestine to be a free state. That's what they want, and that's fine. But when they begin to say that to America, kill all the Jews, kill the Christians that don't agree, then you're stepping over the line. I'm sorry. That's not freedom of speech. The First Amendment, contrary to what Michael Moore says, does not say you have the right to destroy property, advocate for the murder of other people, and basically be an asshole. And with that, CJ, back to you.
There's no question about a freedom of speech. It's constitutional. That's what gives us the right to say what we say. That's what gives you the right to say what you say, people. And when it takes the Supreme Judicial Court of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to make a ruling that says it is okay for you to call out your politicians in a public meeting and they can't shut you up, that says a lot. Now, most of us maintain some decorum, but decorum is not death to the Jews. Decorum is not destroying government center. Decorum is not hate speech. You can have it. Remember, the courts even ruled that the Nazis had the right to march. That was their freedom of speech. But there's something called the conscience. There's something called common sense. And what is the least of all sense to be found? Common sense.
That
And
is
that's
so
what happens.
true. And remember one thing, freedom of speech, long before we got here and talking about saying death to people, which obviously is not protected by freedom of speech. But to get back to it, remember, many years ago, before the Mass Court made that ruling, they clarified First Amendment. You can't yell fire in a crowded room.
That's right.
You can't endanger people. In case you don't know what that ruling meant, was you can't threaten or endanger people. Freedom of speech does not give you the right, and the Supreme Court of Massachusetts gave us a very great opinion. They said you can call them all kinds of nasty stuff. Call them names. Call them all the names you want. Call them an asshole. Call them a shithead. Call them anything you want. But what you can't do is say you should be killed. We want to murder you. You can't do that. That's not protected speech. That is not protected speech. They said you had the right to be rude to them, to be belligerent, to say whatever you wanted to say. You're an American. You have a right to say that. And they're working for you as politicians. So you got the right to call them anything you want, but you can't call for their deaths. You can't say, I'd like to gas you. And it wasn't too long ago, they locked somebody up, finally, that went to a city council meeting or a school committee meeting and was yammering about Palestine and said, and we're going to come and kill you. Well, they locked her up when she said that because they crossed the line. But they probably let her out with no bail the next day. But this is the problem. We have the right in this country to say anything we want. We go back to that great decision that the ACLU, when it was a viable organization, defended the right of the American Nazi Party to have a march. These people were predominantly Jewish lawyers protecting an organization that hated them. They were not protecting their right to call for the Jews' extermination, but they went to court to protect the right of the American Nazi Party to walk down the street and protest. And this is the problem. When it comes to the Democrats have the right to have everybody else killed except them. And that's part of their freedom of speech, but it's not. They have the right to think anything they want, but freedom of speech is not total freedom. It is the freedom to say, to demonstrate. No matter how horrible that opinion is, you have a right to express it. But you cannot advocate for the extermination of people. And you know, I mean, it just boggles my mind how this society has deteriorated over the past 20 years. Especially since the Orange Man has ascended. It gave them their devil. And the Democratic Party showed how corrupt they are by unleashing Antifa before the last election to wreak havoc with no consequences. And now they've released these yo-yos before this upcoming election. I hope people have learned their lesson. Do not listen to the diversionary tactics. Pay attention to what's happening. 2 out of 3 people in this country cannot are living paycheck to paycheck. 40% of the people are having to skip a meal to even attempt to pay their bills. Credit card debt is the highest it's ever been. People are in trouble, but they're telling you everything is good. So all we tell you is what we told you on our first show many, many, many years ago. Follow the money and educate yourself. And with that, CJ, back.
You talked about paycheck to paycheck. Well, for people who work for Stewart Hospitals, St. Anne's, Morton, Good Samaritan, etc., St. Elizabeth's, you will get paid. You will get paid today. The bankruptcy court ruled that your pay is important. They actually said in their ruling that you need to worry about the patient and not about how you're going to make your ends meet. The doctors need to focus on your care, not on what they're going to get. And that's what's going to happen. Now, accordingly, the plan is to sell off the hospitals by June 25th and the Florida hospitals by July 26th. Stewart wants to keep the Florida hospitals, I believe, and they want to exit Massachusetts. And that's fine. I want St. Anne's and Morton and Good Samaritan and St. Elizabeth and all the 8 Massachusetts hospitals sold, preferably to one hospital group, preferably. And I don't want that to be South Coast Hospital Group. I think that we have enough headaches with South Coast Hospital Group. Okay? I don't like their trauma center. I don't like the care that's provided. That's my personal opinion. That's that. If I have to choose between South Coast Hospital and Boston, guess what? I'm taking the next train to Boston. I had to say that. I'll be dead by then, I'm sure. Well, I want to thank you all for watching, and remember, stay safe, stay angry, and hold your politicians accountable. We'll see you on Friday. Dodge the raindrops out there, people. Have a good day.